Thank you all for joining us this morning. Happy Monday. I hope you all had a really wonderful weekend. There we are. I think it is working. Super. So the plan for this... Oh, hang on. YouTube is already talking back to me. Let me get rid of that. There we go. So we are going to be looking at apprenticeships in schools. Now, we've been using apprenticeships for the past 2 years. We've been delivering apprenticeships within schools. We deliver 2 different apprenticeships, and we're going to be focusing really shortly on one of them. And I've got a colleague along with me here today, Beck, who also delivers the programme, so I'll let her introduce herself shortly. Well, thank you very much, everybody, for joining us. So just making sure that everybody's gone to www.menti.com and then pop the code in 38071471, and then we'll get started in a moment. So my name's Rebecca Ray. I'm here on behalf of my company, Rebecca Ray Coaching Consultancy. We do absolutely loads and loads of work in schools and businesses, and we've been working in schools for the past 10 years. We're not teachers though, and that's a really important point to make first of all. We are leadership development specialists, each of us in my team with lots of different strengths, all coaches, trainers, facilitators, have worked in a corporate environment, and then we've all got lots of experience of now working within schools too. So we bring what I would say is a different pair of eyes to your leaders. Now, the apprenticeship route is quite a different one for schools, for school leaders. We've got a cohort at the moment of a number of different, we've got teachers and non-teachers within that cohort, and it's working really, really well. Beck's going to tell you a little bit more about it shortly. But I just really wanted to kind of educate more people, I suppose, within the education sector as to how else you can access apprenticeships, because primarily the funding is amazing. It's a really rigorous, comprehensive programme, absolutely, otherwise I wouldn't be interested in delivering it, if I'm honest. But also, it's going to be much cheaper than anything else you're going to be able to find. It's quite remarkable, actually, as to the costing, the government funding behind it. Now, what I would say with anything that's good, it doesn't come easy. There is some red tape, there's admin around it, signing up and stuff takes a little longer than it normally would do for any of you that have worked with me before, because the government wants to know who's coming on it. So there's a bit of admin around that, and I'll talk to you a little bit about some of that shortly, but the programme is excellent. So the plan for this session now is to give you a bit of an insight as to what these apprenticeships look like, and really hopefully help you understand who they're best for and how you can access them. So I'd just really like to hear from you, if possible, through using Menti. What's your current state of play in your schools? I know in a number of my clients, for example, they've got sports apprentices, sometimes Multi-Academy Trust have accessed something called Kickstart, where they've recruited using apprenticeships. But I wonder if you could just answer this question on your device. What apprenticeships, if any, have you got going on in your schools at the moment? It'd be really interesting to hear from you. If you can't use Menti for whatever reason, please feel free to just pop it in the chat. What apprenticeships have you got going on at the moment? If you've got none, please put none in chat, that's fine. Anybody got any leadership apprenticeships going on? Give you a few more seconds. Great. Okay, interesting, great. So we've got some staff already on a leadership apprenticeship, fantastic. A few schools with none at all. Okay, great. So that's really useful to know, to make sure we can give you all of the information, I suppose. To give you a bit of an insight as to what we deliver 2 different leadership apprenticeships. We deliver a level 5 apprenticeship, which is a foundation degree level. So that is absolutely for senior leaders. I would say you're kind of assistant head level, strategic central team leader level. So for example, in one of my multi-academy trusts, I've got their strategic IT lead on it, and that seems to work perfectly for that level. So for central team, it's really, really good. I don't have any teaching senior leaders on it at the moment, because there are obviously all of the MPQs as options. Now, we're not going to focus on the level 5 today, but if you've got any questions around what would be most appropriate, feel free to contact me and we can have a chat about that. The primary focus for today is actually the team leader level 3 apprenticeship. Now, that's equivalent to about an A level. The kind of people that we've got on that at the moment, it's perfect for office managers, that kind of non-teacher leader, pastoral leaders, but also we've got year group leaders and subject leaders who didn't want to go down the MPQ route. Now, I suppose the key advantage to not going down any of the traditional MPQ routes is that, for those of you that have worked with me before, you'll know that we have quite a pragmatic approach to training our leaders. So the apprenticeship sits perfectly within that. It's a vocational qualification. So how it's useful is it's looking at knowledge, skills and behaviour. It's not just about coming along to a course and going, oh, that was useful, and then not actually applying it. It's assessed on how people are actually applying that knowledge, demonstrating and putting those behaviours into practice, which I really, really like. It means that for your investment, you know, sending those people onto this programme, losing those people for half an hour a month, half a day a month, or whatever that is, it means you should see a direct improvement when they're actually in school. So the team leader is appropriate for that kind of level. Subject leader, year group leader, pastoral leader. And what I found with the non-teacher leaders is it's quite useful for giving people those accredited qualifications. Perhaps they've worked their way up and they've not had that opportunity to get that qualification. So that's been a real advantage for some people that have come on it this time, particularly some of the office managers. So I just wanted to hear from you, really. What are you looking to get from today? I've given you a bit of an idea of what we're going to be discussing, but I wonder if you can just put into Menti if you're looking for anything specific from this today to make sure that we can answer that for you. I'll give you a few moments just to pop any answers in there. And if we're not going to cover it, I can make sure then I do that.
Gillian's commented, Rebecca, on the chat that she's interested to hear about how apprenticeships work for charity providers who work in educational settings as well.
Beck, I'm so sorry. Could you say that again, please? Because I've got YouTube speaking in my ear as well. So if you could say that again, that would be fantastic.
Yeah, no problem. Gillian's put on the chat, so if you can't hear me, you can read the chat.
I can now.
Right, okay, brilliant. She's interested to hear about how apprenticeships work for charity providers who work in educational settings as well. I'm not sure if she can access Menti, so just letting you know what she's put.
Okay, fantastic. Thanks, Beck. Now, there's no reason why it won't work exactly the same. It would depend, and when I come on to levy payment shortly, we can pick this up. But if they're not a levy payer, they would just pay the 95% funding as any other employer would. So there's no reason why they wouldn't, as a charity, be able to access the apprenticeships. It should be exactly the same. Yeah, good questions coming through. Thank you for these so far. So I'll just pick up on the off the job first of all. It's probably one of the most challenging things around apprenticeships as to how to ensure you get off the job. Now, if this is completely new to you, if you've not done apprenticeships before, to give you an idea, if you're engaging in an apprenticeship, you should be able to prove 20% of your working time is spent on your learning. Now, to just try and help you understand how that's feasible, because that sounds ridiculous, first of all, and that's what most of my stakeholders would say, is there's no way I can lose my person for 20% of their working hours. I agree, but you don't need to. So how that's managed is, we'll talk to you a little bit about what our delivery looks like in a moment, but it's not 20%, you know, that you don't send them out for 20%. A lot of the learning that people on these apprenticeships will be doing will be ironically, on the job. So whilst they're perhaps preparing for a crucial conversation they've got to have with a colleague, maybe they come to you as their line manager and they seek some mentoring or some coaching, that's classed as off the job. When they're doing their gap tasks, so we set them tasks in between the sessions, that's classed as off the job. Any reading, we'll be sending them short clips to watch, things like that. When they're engaging in practicing, let's say, for example, for the team leader, they have to do one-to-ones, appraisals, performance management conversations. Let's say they've never done those before. All of that prep that they put in beforehand, that reflection after, and of course the delivery of those appraisals counts as off the job. So what we found is people on the programme, they have managed to complete the 20% off the job successfully through just thinking a little more holistically about it. So in my experience, it has been manageable. That's not to say that there's not a fair amount of work in the apprenticeship, because there is, and I think that would be really important for you to understand. As there is with any leadership development program, if you're getting an accredited qualification, of course, you would expect there to be a good level of assessment, and there is, and I'll talk to you a little bit about that shortly. So on the contracting question, there doesn't need to be a new contract. They can absolutely stay as they are. Anybody can access an apprenticeship. And I think there's kind of certainly my old school view of apprenticeships was that it used to be for 16 to 24-year-olds or whatever that age bracket was. Apprenticeships are for anybody now, and it's for people that are already in existing roles. So you don't need to apply for an apprenticeship, for example. So any of you guys could do the level 5 apprenticeship, should you wish, under your current contract. Okay, nothing about that would have to change. It's just an additional learning program. So thank you for that question. How do you log this 20% that's taking place in working hours? Okay, so there is, as part of, so we work with Northern Training Academy, who are our partners in the apprenticeship delivery. They kind of do the admin side of the apprenticeship, and Beck and I deliver the actual training and the one-to-ones, which we'll talk about shortly. So each learner gets currently a form that they would log any learning. And interestingly, Beck and I have just been chatting about that last week around what it is they log and how they go about doing that. So anytime that, as I mentioned earlier, they're completing their gap tasks, they are having a one-to-one with their line manager, they would be recording that in their form from Northern Training Academy. There are plans to go, we're going to be moving to a more electronic automated system in the next few months. I'm not exactly sure when that will be, but it's coming. But currently, it's a really easy process. They've got a form that they just need to log. Any other questions? So they're great questions that I wasn't going to cover. So that's really, really useful to see those coming up. Thank you for that. Anything else you've got before I start to zoom in on the team leader apprenticeship and what that involves? Okay. So you can comment on any slide as we go through anyway. There's a little kind of speech bubble section at the bottom, so you can also add any comments there should it have moved on before you've had the opportunity to ask any questions. So to give you a little bit of an idea of how we deliver the apprenticeship, Beck's going to give you some more information in a moment, but it's slightly different to how perhaps you might have experienced an apprenticeship before. Being a coaching and training company as we are, we're not a traditional apprenticeship company, so we see the opportunity to deliver apprenticeships slightly differently. We deliver the apprenticeships, Puppy's going to join the meeting. We deliver the apprenticeships in a group cohort. So often a apprenticeship might be delivered on a one-to-one, where the coach comes to the workplace and works with that person on a one-to-one. What we prefer to do is get some peer learning going. So we deliver virtual and face-to-face sessions, which Beck will tell you a little bit more about in a moment, to really get those peer conversations going. So we've got a small cohort of learners at the moment who are all in education, in various different roles, in different schools, in different multi-academy trusts. And that in itself, of course, gives really great learning, where people think, oh gosh, okay, it's not always done like this then. I didn't realise schools can do this so differently, or they start to get a better understanding of different roles. So that's the way we deliver it as a group cohort. So you're getting, I believe, much more than just an assessor coming out and sitting with that person on a one-to-one. So that gives you a bit of an idea, I suppose, as to how we go about doing it. As I mentioned earlier, these are the kind of people that can access it. It is very much team leader, supervisor, kind of first line management. If you've got somebody who is leading people for the first time, but they do have to be leading people, by the way, it can't be somebody who you've got in the pipeline, because they're going to need to be demonstrating those skills. So they need to have at least another that they're responsible for leading for. That's a really important point. Somebody to practice on, if you like. So great if you've got a pastoral leader who's looking to gain their leadership qualification, experience, knowledge and skills. As I mentioned earlier, people in the office function, admin functions, it's really been really helpful. So those central staff as well, there's not always routes for those central staff if you're here from a mat. And perhaps teachers that are now starting that leadership position, who are looking for those practical skills, because as you may know, looking at them, the MPQs, there's not as much around some of the topics that we cover, which we're about to show you. Yeah, great question there. Thank you for that, Sue. Absolutely. So the virtual sessions, as you'll see in a moment, we record all of the virtual sessions. And what we've realised is during lockdown, that's a huge gain, because if somebody can't come, and that's realistic, isn't it, in a school, particularly at the moment, they can go back and watch that recording. But what we've also found is, because this programme is a 12-month programme, the Team Leader Apprenticeship, of course, 12 months ago, that was a very long time ago. So to be able to go back to the recording and revise and refresh their knowledge, it's really useful, to the degree where I've actually started recording the face-to-face sessions too. Just having Zoom on in the background then enables people to revisit it. And also, if people can't travel, we've had that with the fuel crisis and all sorts of things. When people haven't been able to travel, we've just put them up on Zoom. So we've done a hybrid event. It doesn't duplicate, it's not as good as being there face-to-face, but we have definitely learned to be much more flexible over the past 2 years. So I'm going to hand over to Beck now, who's just going to tell you a little bit more about how we deliver it and what that looks like.
Okay, thank you, Rebecca. So I've been delivering the team leader modules on behalf of Rebecca Ray Coaching Consultancy. And how this looks on a month-to-month basis is that you will attend a virtual session with me and our group of learners at the time. So you will get to meet and interact with people, like we say, from different businesses, different schools, which is an experience in itself. So we're always learning from each other. We have 8 virtual modules and 2 face-to-face. The virtual modules take 3-hour sessions, so we keep them short and snappy. But during that time, we cover the standards that we need to deliver as part of each module. We use an interactive platform, so hopefully you will see that our virtual modules are very interactive. It's not a sitting and listening exercise. There's a lot going on, and what I actually love about them is no two are the same, because even though we put all of the information and populate the template, you guys are adding to it from your own experiences, your own thoughts and reflections. So we could look at 2 modules delivered on different days to different groups, and they're very different, because even though there is a set format to follow for us, what we've found is that you will apply it to your organisation and your school. So it's very individual in that way, which is one of my favourite things about it. So if I give you an example of a recent module that we covered a module called Managing People. So we looked at different management models in that. And that was really interesting because we looked at our previous experiences of being managed ourselves and the approaches that our managers took. And what we liked about them, what we didn't like about them. And then we reflected on what our own preference was when we manage our own team of people. We looked at how we see our staff does shape how we behave with our staff. And then as a result, we recognised the need for flexibility. So we worked with what our strengths was and looked at how we could help develop and work on our own weaknesses as team leaders. We looked at things like our team dynamics, which was a really great exercise in recognising where our teams are. So this is an example of where we really personalise those modules. You will look at your own individual team and every single learner there will have a different example to give where your team are. And if you recognise, we use models to back up that knowledge. So if you recognise within those certain modules where your team is at, then you recognise how we can actually manage them really, really effectively. How much support we give them, how much direction we give them. And that's really, really useful tool in enabling your team, empowering your team and becoming a really successful leader yourself. We looked at things like motivation and then also HR processes. So we looked at the HR processes and things like the performance management cycle. But what does the process look like within your organization? So again, we're taking those models, we're taking those approaches and we're applying them within your own business and making sure that they work and recognizing where you could implement things to help your team move forward as well. So that's one example of a module and what we covered in those 3 hours. Next month is really interesting, or this month actually. We're doing awareness of self. So I'm really looking forward to this because it's about really putting the spotlight on yourself, looking at your social skills, at your emotional intelligence, empathy, all of those things that you need to be an effective leader and which will really influence your behaviour with those individuals within your team. So they're just a couple of examples of what we do cover. What we do at the end of each module is we give you a number of gap tasks. 2 or 3 gap tasks. And these are designed to help you to really consolidate that knowledge, everything that we've looked at, and encourage you to put it into practice. Look for opportunities in the workplace. So I've challenged my group of learners this month to look at when they've received feedback. We all receive feedback on a weekly basis. Most of the time it's in one ear, out of the other. But what I want to really challenge them to do is listen to it and consider where it's come from, why that person really felt strongly enough to give them that feedback, and are they going to make any changes as a result, which is really, really interesting. And if not, why not? So we're really, really looking at ourselves and our reasoning behind how we react to things and also our emotions as well. So it's going to be quite an interesting one. So those gap tasks are there to give you things to work on and to incorporate into your job. So like Rebecca said earlier, we would count that as off the job activities, but it's actually something that you're doing anyway. Many of them may be reflective, so it's not actually taking a lot of time away from what you're doing in your role. We're just asking you to really give it that focus that it deserves, and then we can link it in. A lot of the evidence that you produce, you might give us one piece of evidence. It could be meetings, minutes to a meeting. But even though this came up as a result of one module, we can tie it into a lot of standards across a number of modules. So one piece of evidence works to meet a lot of standards. So it's not as demanding as you think. We might be focused on one standard, but as we cover more modules, we can go back and say, this piece of evidence that you submitted 2 months ago actually covers a lot more standards that we're talking about now. And we use a really great platform for that at the minute. I know it's all going to an e-portfolio platform in the future, but we've put our own into place. So what that will do is it will allow you to build up that evidence in one place, and we can see that and we can give you feedback as we go along. After you attend the sessions, you'll then have a one-to-one coaching session with myself as well. So this is where we can just focus on what's coming up for you in your role. I can give you support on building that evidence up. We can tie in your work experiences to the things that we've covered on the module. So this is really useful time to just look at your own challenges, and I can support you personally through getting those evidences built up. And like I say, our platform will help you to see what your progress is. We set deadlines. I like to think of it as drip feeding. So it's not that you're overwhelmed with lots of work and I've got so much to do and so much to manage. What we'll do is we'll just drip feed a few little tasks as we go on, and you can incorporate them into your role. So it's really, really manageable, but you've always got that one-to-one support as well, which I find really, really useful. Your evidence can be anything from, I've mentioned minutes to meetings. It can be simple Q&A sessions. It can be recorded chat, it can be feedback from colleagues, from your line manager. It takes lots and lots of different forms, and sometimes people come up with pieces of evidence I've not even thought of, but you go, yes, that's so many different standards that you've just met with that. So it can be anything that comes up in your daily work. It's not like we're asking you to create things that don't currently exist. It's things that you produce as part of your job. So that off the job activity isn't truly off the job, like Rebecca says, and it will enable you to build up quite a lot of really, really useful and applicable evidence. Your assessment at the end, do we want to talk about that now,
I'll
Rebecca?
come on to that in a minute.
Okay,
thanks so much.
Okay, no problem.
In addition to that, Beck, thanks, that's been really helpful. We cover, we do an observation. So for each learner, we'll come out to school and we'll observe that learner in action, which is a really great opportunity to observe them and give them some feedback, and that will also class as evidence. So I'll give you a little bit of an insight in a moment as to what we mean by evidence and what we're trying to achieve there. But we also do things called professional discussions, where we talk to the learners about what it is they've learned. They get an opportunity to kind of remember some of the knowledge, some of the models, and how they're going to apply them. So we've got a number of different ways in which we deliver the knowledge, skills and behaviours that are required. Also, a point to I suppose bring to your attention, it's a rolling programme. So people can join whenever. So you don't have to wait until the next academic year. In fact, we've got room now for learners, so people can join at whatever point. The modules are constantly rolling on and off on an annual basis. So to give you a bit of an idea of the funding side of things, so for those of you that have got apprenticeships going on already, you may already be aware of this, but if you're a larger organisation, perhaps a multi-academy trust, it's likely that you'll be paying into an apprenticeship levy, and that may well be managed centrally. So some of you that work with me a lot already, I've already got that set up with your HR team, where we've got a bit of a process going. It works really, really well. So if you're a levy payer, it means that you will be able to access that money that's in that levy pot, or you may be able to access that money in that levy pot. The team leader apprenticeship costs £4,500. So what that means is that if you're a levy payer, money is automatically taken from your organisation and held in this levy pot, ready to be spent. It's basically the government's way of ensuring that larger organisations are training and developing their people. But what happens is often that levy pot isn't spent, and it's a real shame, because guess what, it just goes back to the government and spent goodness knows where and not on your people. So it's really important to find ways to spend it appropriately. So if you are an apprenticeship levy payer, for each person going on the team leader apprenticeship, it will cost £4,500 from that pot. Now, if you're not a levy payer, perhaps you're a standalone school or a charity, as Beck said earlier, or you're a smaller multi-academy trust who isn't yet an apprenticeship levy payer, you still receive 95% funding for that particular apprenticeship. So it would cost £250, that's all, for 12 months of training. So it's an incredible value for money. I don't know any other programme that you can pay £250 for 12 months of training. It's just not available. Yeah, Sue, thanks for that question. I'll come on to that in a moment. Great point about English and maths. So that's the funding available there. I mentioned earlier that there is an endpoint assessment because it is an accredited qualification. It's obviously important that we're able to prove that people are all working at the right level. So along the programme, during that 12-month period, as Beck mentioned, we are pointing learners in the direction of how to collect evidence. So one of the requirements, for example, is for them to conduct an appraisal. Evidence for that would be the documentation, or they could record it if the other person was happy to do that. That would then go in their portfolio of evidence. An average portfolio for a team leader would consist of about 20 pieces of evidence. So it's 20 pieces of evidence over a 12-month period. So you're not looking at a huge amount of evidence, and it is work they're doing every day anyway. So once we've kind of got our learners on board with understanding that, it's a lot easier. We do help them out by doing these professional discussions. We record that. That is also evidence. That's them proving their knowledge. But as well as their portfolio of evidence, they also do a presentation at the end to the assessing body. So it's assessed in those two different ways: portfolio of evidence with a professional discussion. So they have a professional discussion to their assessor, and then a presentation. And that's managed however they want to do it. So they can do it all on the same day, they can do it on different days, they can do it with you with them, they can do it on their own. It's really flexible. We're basically trying to set them up to be as successful as possible and at least get a pass. They can get a pass, merit, or distinction. Okay. Now, if you do choose to put learners on this, we can give you much more information on the kind of nuts and bolts of it, but I'm really just trying to give you a bit of an overview now. Now, Sue's question in the English and maths is a really good one. So if you're going on an apprenticeship, you need to prove that you've got English and maths level 2. So it's GCSE equivalent A to C. Dependent on when you took your qualifications, you may or may not have that. So what the process is, if you've got certificates to prove you've got English and maths A to C, super, you don't have to do anything else. If you pass them but you don't have the certificate, there's a couple of different options. You can try and get a certificate, go into the assessing body, or you can take another functional skills assessment, and Northern Training Academy support the learner with that. So there's different ways and means of doing it, but that is sometimes a little barrier for people if perhaps they've not studied for a long time. They get a bit worried about the English and maths. So we'd absolutely help you allay their fears should you want to do that. So the partnership, the question just come in around partnership for accreditation. It's Northern Training Academy we deliver the apprenticeships with, and the current assessing body that Northern Training Academy are using are Innovate. Thanks, that's great as well there, Sue. Absolutely. We wouldn't necessarily do a live appraisal documentation, but if you were to record it, you'd have to get permission from the other person. Any evidence that we submit is all redacted with any personal information as well, so that's no problem at all. We support the learner with that. So that's the endpoint assessment. For me, although it can be a bit scary for the learners, I think it really helps ensure that people aren't just taking an afternoon out from school, enjoying it, but not applying it. For me, it really makes sure that they understand what they're learning and they're really looking at how they're going to apply it in the school and into the workplace. And for me, I'm seeing much more long-lasting impact perhaps than training sessions that people have attended with me before. So that is our information giving over, if you like. So over to you, really, if there's any particular questions. So Sue, I've just seen on the chat, on average, how long after entering Gateway does the 8? So within 6 weeks. So a question we've just got in from Sue. So what happens is, when the learners finished all of their learning over that 12-month period, they enter into what's called the Gateway conversation, which is us making sure that they're ready for their endpoint assessment. And we then aim to, they get offered a date then within 6 weeks with Innovate, the assessing body, to have their professional discussion and their presentation. So we aim to wrap that up quite swiftly, Sue. Thanks for that question. Any other questions anybody's got, please feel free to pop them in the chat, or if you'd like to come off mute, whatever would work best for you. Yeah, absolutely, Sue. So depending on what support they need, the support given there. Yeah, that's no problem at all. What I found with my current cohort of learners, they're all in different places. So I wouldn't put them through Gateway until they are absolutely ready. So the majority of the support would be before Gateway. If they've gone into their Gateway and then they have a bit of a panic, thinking, oh my goodness, I've forgotten everything, absolutely we'd be giving them appropriate levels of support. We wouldn't just be leaving them. Thank you for your question. Anything else? Anybody got any other questions? Anything, Beck, you'd like to add that perhaps I've not covered?
No, I think you've covered everything there, Rebecca. Thank you.
Well, thanks so much, everybody, for joining us. I suppose all I want to leave you with really is, if you've got somebody in mind that you'd like to consider further, perhaps you'd like to talk with us on more of a one-to-one, please feel free to contact us. My phone number is there. You can email. I'm on Twitter, LinkedIn, Facebook, wherever you found us. Please feel free to contact us. I will send you out a copy of this recording of this session should you want to revisit it. But I'd be really happy to chat with you on a one-to-one if you're interested in looking at a learner or cohorts of learners. The way that we deliver it is really flexible. So if you're looking at doing it specifically for your MAT, we could do your cohorts just for your multi-academy trust. We're really, really flexible in how we go about doing it. We primarily talked today about how we do it now, but we're very happy to talk with you about other options. So thank you so much for joining us, everybody. It's lovely to see you. If we've worked with you before, it's really nice to see you. And hopefully we'll be in touch very soon.
Thank you, Rebecca.
Thanks, Susie.
Yeah,
so nice to see you. Take care. Have a great
Bye.
week, everybody.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.
Take care.